This PowerPoint 365 demonstration was recorded as part of the Creating Accessible Content with Office 365 webinar. I'll show a few things in PowerPoint. I did want to mention that the techniques that I talked about for Word, those apply throughout Office products. That includes PowerPoint, it includes Outlook. So anytime you're writing, text in a paragraph, you're using links, color, tables, all of the things that we talked about are good best practices across Office 365. And the same thing goes if you are exporting a PDF document. So PowerPoint obviously is a little bit different animal in terms of how things are formatted. It tends to be highly visual. One of the things that we do recommend just in general, and this is for clarity, is to keep the text on your slides at a minimum. So I do have this example presentation. This particular template was designed by a company called PowerTemplate. I've intentionally made it inaccessible to demonstrate these features, so it's not something that they did, but I did have in here, these are steps for the principles of web accessibility. We've got perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And then in the middle of this slide, we've got little puzzle pieces, each one representing one of these principles of web accessibility. So, and then underneath each one of the callouts for the puzzle pieces, we've got the actual, title of that principle, so perceivable, for example, on the first one, and underneath that, some text that says what it is, must be able to comprehend the information depicted. So I would say that in a live presentation, this is probably too much text to have on the screen because people will tend to be paying attention to trying to read the slide versus your presentation. So my recommendation would be to try to first simplify the slide as much as you can before addressing any accessibility issues. Now, obviously, if you're designing this slide from scratch, you'd want to make it accessible from the ground up. But if you are trying to fix accessibility issues in an existing presentation, then you're looking at the simplicity of the slide is a good way to go because it's just going to make life easier. So I've gone ahead and done that. I deleted the subtext. So now I just have puzzle pieces on screen. I've got my steps here: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And another thing in PowerPoint is that each slide to be accessible needs a slide title. And there is a title box on most templates for the slide title. And this one doesn't have that filled out. So I'm going to actually copy off screen my title here and put it in this box. And I'm pasting it as unformatted text because it's picking up the text from my Word document, but I've got principles of web accessibility as the title. Now, PowerPoint, just like Word, has the accessibility checker. I can get there by going to Review, and that's in the tabs at the top in the ribbon bar, and going to check accessibility in the accessibility section of the ribbon bar. So I do see that I've got some errors here, missing alt text, quite a few things here, and should check the reading order. So the missing alternative text is showing because I've got these puzzle pieces in the middle of the screen. Now they are actually pieces that are made up of lots of little illustrations. So I can click on some of these pieces. So I'm on a puzzle piece and it's kind of 3D, and each shadow, each curve of the puzzle piece is its own image. That's a lot to navigate through with a screen reader. So the best practice would be to group these images, and I'm going to do that by selecting all of them. Even the shadows, each one of these pieces, because they're 3D, they have shadows at the bottom as well. Each one of these shadows is also a separate image. So I've selected all of them, and I'm going to go up to Shape Format here, and I'm going to actually group them together. I go up to the Shape Format tab. Once I've selected it, that appears in the ribbon bar. and then I have a group option in the arrange section. I'm going to group them together. And when I do that in the accessibility checker, my warnings or my errors for missing alternative text, there were probably a dozen of them there before, and now there's just one for my group. So I can actually give my group its own alt text, and I only need to do that for the group itself. So I've actually got some alt text written. I'm going to copy that off screen, but I can right click on this group. And again, I can go to edit alt text and I can just paste what I've got. So I've got an illustration showing a set of puzzle pieces, each one aligned with one of the principles of web accessibility. This group image contains a number of individual graphics that make up the puzzle pieces. So the reason I say that is because if someone's another content creator and they're editing my presentation here, I want them to know that there are a bunch of graphics here, and they're probably going to hear just the word graphic when navigating that with a screen reader, but that this is a group and that's what the group represents. So go back to the accessibility checker. The last thing that I've got in here is a warning to check the slide reading order. Now, PowerPoint slides are read from the bottom up. So the content that you add to a slide first is going to be the first thing that's read. So I can go to my home tab here up in the ribbon bar, and there's an editing area, and I can click on the select option there, and I can go to selection pane. Now that's going to show me everything that's on my slide and the order in which they were added to the slide. So if I'm looking at this one here, the first thing on my slide is actually the footer at the bottom. That's designed by Powered Template, because that's their attribution for their template. So that's the first thing that the screen reader is going to read. I actually don't want it to read that first. I want it to read the title first. So I can go to my selection pane and I can actually move the title. That's going to be the last thing read because it's at the top. I can move it and drag it to the bottom. And again, you can navigate these panes with keyboard shortcuts as well. So now I've moved my title to the bottom. So now the first thing that's going to be read is the title. The next thing is still the footer placeholder, but that's not really the second thing I want to be read either. I actually want the group of images that have the the perceivable, the steps of principles of accessibility, perceivable, operable, and understandable. I want that to be read next. So those are actually these callouts. I've got 4 callouts listed in my selection pane, and when I go to those, it does select which one they are. So I can actually arrange the order as I like. So I've arranged it so that the title's read first, then the 4 callouts. Then the group that represents the puzzle pieces, and then the footer that is the attribution for this. So I've verified that reading order. If I go back to the accessibility, it still has that warning. So warnings are just that. They're going to tell you things that you might want to watch out for, but they're not errors. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's incorrect. It just means it's something that you need to do. The computer doesn't know what reading order I intend, so I have to manually check that. So if you've checked that and the warning's still there, which it should be, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just note that, hey, I've already checked the reading order on this. It's just letting you know to do that. So there is one other thing that you can do that is on the review tab. So I go up to ribbon bar and go to the review tab, and under check accessibility, I do have a reading order pane. Now this can be a little confusing because it's actually showing you the reading order. It's not the selection order, it's the reading order, and that would be read from top to bottom. So the order that I just arranged it in should be reflected here. So I've got my title first, my callouts, and then my group, which represents the puzzle pieces, and then the footer. Again, I would recommend to use color carefully. If you are going to use color, make sure that it's not the only way that you're conveying information. So, don't say, the red square represents such and such a thing. Maybe put a checkbox in that, or, some sort of icon that's distinguishable from its color. This concludes the PowerPoint 365 demonstration for creating accessible content with Office 365. The presentation, as well as the questions and answers segment, will be provided as separate videos. Thank you for watching.